To actually simulate this model, we use a software program called Stella, and it allows us to easily manipulate the variables on a path diagram like this, while the actual equations that govern the dynamics of the system are hidden in the graphic. So I did want to emphasize that equations like this are embedded within those little circles and arrows, and they actually dictate the relationships between the variables. So in a sense that the actual Stella diagram is a visual representation of a mathematical formalization of the Chase-Dunn-Hall iteration model that Jesse just took you through. Now we started simple. We started with just a single society. Once we felt comfortable with the results for that, we would build up into a two-patch world system model where there's actual inter-societal interaction. The single society model, like where do we get these equations from, right? Well, the single society model is it's based on the Lotka-Volterra differential equations, which are the foundation for the classic ecological predator-prey model, right? So in our society, humans are the predators, and the renewable resources that they consume, they're the equivalent of the prey. We did modify the equations to better fit some of the theoretical assumptions about the resources used by early sedentary peoples. So let me take you through the single society model quick. Here's the entire model. Up top, we have a population flow where people are born and they die or they migrate out into the ether at this point. At the bottom, we have a resource flow where resources are produced, harvested, and they're either consumed or they decay. And these two flows interact with each other through these mediating variables of population density and the consumption levels of the society, which is essentially just the amount of resources per person. So as the population grows, this is exact parallel to the iteration model just did. As the population grows, the population density increases because we have a fixed amount of land. At least the population pressures cause intensification, degradation. They influence the resource reproduction rate, the harvesting rate, and ultimately lower the levels of consumption in society. With low levels of consumption, migration starts to occur, starvation, internal conflict. All these things lead to deaths, or well, not migration, but all these things lead to lower population levels, and that, in a sense, reduces the population pressure. So we have population pressure building over here, we have population pressure being released over here, and these two processes are working in conjunction all the time in a single society. Now, I showed you before the modified Lotka-Volterra equations that we based our model upon. Let's look at actual solutions to those equations to give us kind of like a baseline of what we would expect for our Stella model. So this is solutions to just those two equations I showed before. It's predator-prey model. The predator is in blue, the prey is in red, and this is the population levels as they change with time. And you can see that the solutions give stable solutions. The carrying capacity is reached, and they just reach a stable equilibrium. They stay there, and it turns out this is consistent with what ecologists would expect for early human societies, based on what Peter Turchin from Duke University calls fast timescale feedback effects. And apparently, in large territorial mammals like humans, once the carrying capacity is reached, right, any surplus individuals with the lowest reproductive rates, lowest survival rates, they tend to die off really quickly, and the population growth rate is reduced to zero without any time lag, so we would expect stable solutions like this. So that's encouraging. The equations that we were basing our model upon are consistent with what ecologists would expect for early human societies. Now let's take a look at what our actual model produces. This is the solution to our Stella model in conjunction, comparing to the modified Lotka-Volterra equations, which we based our model upon up here. You can see, other than noise in our model, due to stochastic processes that we built in, like the variability of rainfall from year to year and other things, the forms are almost identical. The population in blue corresponds to the predator population in blue, and they both stabilize after almost the same amount of time. The human population stabilizes at around 130 individuals in the society, which is within the range of what we'd expect for early sedentary societies. And you can notice the resource and the prey are in red, very similar form as well. So, not only are we consistent with the foundational equations that we based our model upon, we're consistent with what ecologists would expect for early sedentary societies. We feel good about this. Let's build on this single society model, because what we're really interested in, obviously, is world system dynamics. Here's our world system model. It looks incredibly complex. But on the left, actually, all we have is our single society model that I just took you through. This is identically the same thing. What we've added is this, what we call a regional system of societies, and we view this as like a conglomeration of societies that are surrounding this local society that initially start with zero population. Eventually, people will migrate into them. So instead of migrating into the ether, like Jesse said, they're now migrating into something. their own little society. The regional system has similar dynamics to the local system, local society, population flow, resource flow, the mediating variables. The one major difference is we bias the resource flow to be less productive than the resource flow of the local system. And that's based on the assumption that people will settle the most resource-rich areas of a region first. So they settle in the local society and only move to the marginal regional areas when pressures build up enough. Now up here we have the warfare flow, and that actually governs the warfare dynamics of our model, which is one way in which the local society will interact with the regional system. So I'll take you through the dynamics, but like Jesse said, as the population pressures in the local society build enough, eventually people start migrating. Now they actually migrate into the regional system, which starts at zero population. As the regional system grows, its own dynamics, which are very similar to the local society, take over. They have their own reproductive processes, and they slowly grow towards carrying capacity. Now, once the carrying capacity is reached, circumscription emerges, and circumscription serves two purposes. It inhibits migration, so people no longer migrate from the local to the regional system because there's no reason to move there when the conditions are just as bad as where they are, right? And then circumscription also leads to warfare, because when times are tough, there's nowhere to go, people, we assume, turn to violence to secure the resources that they need for survival. So, up to this point, what's been happening is regional systems filling up, the world system population pressure now is growing, and once warfare kicks on, a certain proportion of the society is killed off, and that reduces this world system population pressure. So we get a nice cycle: pressure built, released, built, released. So now let's look at some solutions to this model. So the first couple hundred years, the local society is in blue. This is the population level. The regional system population is in red. You can see that the local society, it actually does the exact same thing as the single society model. It rises up to about 130 people and stays there with a little bit of noise. Meanwhile, the regional system is slowly ramping up towards its carrying capacity. Now, if we back out 5,000-year period, so this was what we were looking at before, just over here. Once the regional system hits its carrying capacity, all of a sudden circumscription emerges, warfare is generated, and we